An old-timer at a meeting back in Maine once said to me, "If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time." Which is to say, if we want to do a thing, we need to plan for it and not merely expect it to happen. Our culture is awash in rags to riches stories. 19th century Unitarian minister Horatio Alger wrote countless children's stories about a poor orphaned boy who, through hard work and a little luck, managed to achieve great success. We point to Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and, yes, even Mark Zuckerberg as some kind of miraculous gurus of success, as though they merely showed up with the right idea and pow, they're millionaires or billionaires. That's a myth. Well, not the part about the billionaires. They're billionaires. That's real. But the myth is that their success happened all of a sudden, totally by chance through dumb luck and great timing. And we set ourselves up for failure when we believe that myth. Because when we try and fail, we don't understand that we're in a marathon, not a sprint. And that we have to plan for the long game, not just the time between now and, say, Tuesday. The likelihood of anyone achieving fame and fortune by being in the right place at the right time is somewhere on the far side of their chances of being struck by lightning at the exact moment they are being eaten by a shark. Lasting success, even when it looks like it came easy, involves dedication, practice, patience, and planning. We must crawl before we can walk. We must learn our ABCs before we can begin to write the great American novel. Now, strategic planning has gotten a bad reputation over the years, and I believe that is because it has evolved into this complex, cumbersome process that has too many meetings, focus groups, reports, evaluations, assessments, projections, and superfluous box-checking exercises. To consider where we want to be in the future requires us to engage the creative parts of our brains that imagine what could be in the future. Flying cars, robot maids, watches with TV screens built into them, entire jobs where people do nothing but push buttons on a computer all day. Who could imagine it? Still waiting on my flying car and my robot maid. So we take all that awesome creative spirit and try to harness it by putting it into a rigid set of steps, requiring it to be linear, constraining it with a committee. When I first interviewed with a search committee for this position, they asked me what I thought to be a very odd, although very wise question. What is your least favorite part of ministry? And I remember wincing, because we were on the phone, so I could do that. Because I knew instantly what my answer was. Honestly, I asked. They're like, yeah. Yes, honestly, minister. Meetings, I said. I hate meetings. I loathe committee meetings. If you want to take a great idea and kill it, give it to a committee. Committee meetings are the graveyards of creativity, I said. Okay, so maybe that was a little hyperbolic with that last bit, but I think it happens far too often that brilliant prophetic visions get ground down into dry dust by process and procedure. By the time this fabulous creative goal is achieved, everyone involved in the process is sick of talking about it and going to those damn meetings. Thank God that's over. We've achieved it. Now, can we just be for a little while? And I confess, when the Uttses first described what they wanted for a sermon topic, I thought, this is some sort of karmic revenge. Planning? Really? Why not Star Trek or Death with Dignity, or even the relative merits of baseball versus football? No, Paul wanted to talk about planning. My inner dialogue went something like this. planning. Good God. There are a few things in life that appeal to me less than planning. I tend to go through life addressing things that are on fire, putting them out and moving on. Planning that is described as strategic or long range simply give me hives. Let's talk about strengths and weaknesses, values of the congregation, opportunities and challenges, broader societal expectations, flowcharts, circles and arrows, brainstorming, focus groups, testing, assessing, testing, and assessing. And this is how I think we all tend to think about planning. At least that's how I think about planning when it comes to institutions like church or businesses or schools or nonprofits. I suppose some folks use that format when planning out their personal lives, minus the focus groups, I guess. It is not my business to yuck anyone else's yum, but not my thing. I prefer to look at planning from a different lens. What if we treated all our planning as though we were planning a vacation to Disney or Europe or Australia? Or what if we were planning to develop a method of living that permits us to go on regular vacations where and when we'd like to go? What if we treated strategic planning for institutions and long-range planning as though we were making plans to do a thing we really wanted to do? Something incredibly fun, empowering, that feeds our soul, that we want to share with our friends and family. Like, well, we're going to need this much money for plane tickets and that much for hotel, and when we get there, we want to go to this park and that museum and this other restaurant. And so we make plans, and we budget, and we search Google and find out how long it will take us to get there. Or if you don't do Google, we call AAA, right, and have them figure it out. And it's exciting, and it's fun, and we look forward to it. Planning for that kind of thing is fun, as opposed to, say, church. Which brings me to a larger question. Where is our challenge about exuberance around church? Where is that rooted? We love this place, yes. We show up every week, mostly every week. We give money. We proved that a couple weeks ago. That was pretty awesome. We love the people here. You ask Unitarian Universalists why they come to church, the number one reason is usually community. To be around people who understand me. We love the work that we do here. We love the values that we hold and the way we challenge ourselves to live into them, right? Then why don't we get excited about all of that and tell people about it like we want to share the last great movie we saw or the new book we just read? Or this great restaurant we found. We talk about growth. Do we want more people just like us? Do we want a more diverse group? Because I think more people exactly like us would, be okay, but I think it would not necessarily be healthy for us as an organization. Do we want to be mostly white, probably overeducated, middle and upper middle class professionals, academics, and retired folks? Or do we want people who come from different backgrounds and have different experiences and have a multitude of voices in the chorus? Now, I don't know that we've got market saturation for our demographic here, but I'm inclined to think that our best bet for growth is going to be beyond our own circle of comfort. What is it we want to do? Most people, first thing they say is grow. We want to grow. Okay. Growth for the sake of growth is the philosophy of a cancer cell. You have to have a plan. You have to have an idea of what you want to do with that growth. Just getting big because getting big, it means another size of clothes, right? So I want us to look at not necessarily what the market is presently doing or what people are currently buying necessarily. What is it that drives us, that makes our hearts sing, that causes us to stay awake at night thinking about possibilities? That's the first step in the way I want us to plan. The next step in planning, of course, is to consider what sort of timeline. Now, I know we're getting close to that list and meetings and stuff thing, but a timeline for this goal. How long do we want to invest in getting to this thing we want to be? How old do I want to be when I retire? That's the sort of questions we have to ask. How long do I want to wait before we realize this thing we want to be? And what do I want to do after I achieve that goal? If I have learned anything after all my years of 12-step recovery work, it is that a goal is a nice thing to have, but to think that achieving that goal will make me happy is a fool's errand. A goal is a place to assess, take stock, celebrate an accomplishment, and then to consider what's next. I likened talking about, in my misspent youth, one of the skills I acquired was a relative skill at playing pool. I had an uncle who used to say that proficiency at pool is a sign of a misspent youth. Oh well. But playing pool requires strategy and planning. It requires skill, yes, but it requires thinking 3 shots ahead. If I make this shot, where's that going to lead me for my next shot? And if I make that shot, where's that going to lead me for my next shot? And all the while, of course, because it's a competitive game, I want to leave myself well, but not leave an opportunity for the other person. So there's a lot going on there. It requires planning, but not in the way that involves checklists and focus groups. We talk about, I love those lessons from Toy Story. And I've been thinking about this a lot this week. And it's fascinating. I did some research, and on the 20th anniversary of the Toy Story franchise, according to Google, approximately 2.3 million articles were written with various taglines of lessons from Toy Story. And this sermon could have lasted a great deal longer than it will. But I think the ones that we talked about today, that we heard about in our reading, are worthwhile to look at. Because jealousy, which was the first one, is a great way to make you and others miserable. We will not succeed if we compare ourselves to other congregations. That's not a measure that works for us. We need to consider how we feel about what we're doing. Because if we don't love this, if we're not working at this out of our own passion, but if we're doing it to be as good as somebody else or be better than this other congregation, that's not a healthy measure. The second lesson was that not everything revolves around you. And that is true. As a congregation, as a religious community, our job is to deepen our own spiritual lives, yes, but it is to serve the world, to make the world a better place. That's part of our mission. That's part of when I talk to people here, that's how I hear people understand the role of this institution, is to be a little voice for progressive things in this vast red swath of New Jersey, right? To infinity and beyond is a powerful motto, even if it's limited to the imagination. It's true. If we don't dream big, then we miss an opportunity. There's the old saying, I'd rather shoot for the moon and land on a lamppost than shoot for the lamppost and land in the gutter. And what seems like a better place, sometimes we think we have an idea of a goal of where we want to be, and it turns out that that's not actually better than where we've been. And the wonderful thing about planning and the wonderful thing about institutions like this is that we have the ability to change if we try something and it doesn't work for us. So planning is not something that locks us into a particular trajectory. If we get into it and say, this really does not fit for us, then we can change that, and it's okay. And the last one, of course, is from the theme song, You've Got a Friend in Me. Does anybody here remember Randy Newman? One-hit wonder from the 70s? Oh, that's Gary Newman? Sorry. I was all being clever, and short people. That's the same guy. Right. Okay, 2 hits, I'm sorry. So you've got a friend in me. If we get into this planning thing and we lose sight of our relationship with each other, then we have lost. If we get into our mission about what we want our church to be, or our congregation to be, and it deteriorates our connection with each other, then we have lost. So one of the focuses of any kind of growth planning work that we do here is to remember that we are a community, a beloved community, that shares our vulnerable parts of ourselves with each other. We need to grow with intention. Now, one of the things also in that interview that we talk about, and I've talked about with a bunch of different congregations that I've served, is you ask any congregation what they want to do for the future, and they'll come up with 4 things. We want to have more people. No, we want to be financially stable. We want to have more people. We want to do social outreach. And we want to deepen our spiritual lives. And I'm here to tell you that that's upside down. We need to deepen our spiritual lives, which will empower us to do social outreach, which will attract more people, which will build our foundation of financial health. Because there is nothing so, all right, let me ask, how many people here joined because the church needed more members? Okay? We join usually because there's something here that is attractive to us on a deep level. And that happens because we've met other people who participate. So we deepen our social lives, our spiritual lives. We do social outreach. We do justice work. We go to marches and we do the things, right? Which is where we meet people who are attracted to us and who come and join, which broadens our base of financial support. Strategic planning too often loses sight of strategy and plans and devolves into an extended checklist of tasks and reports and busy work that feels utterly divorced from whatever the original plan may have been. We have a goal of being a vibrant, diverse, outward-focused congregation that does justice work and deepens the spiritual lives of our members. It does not hurt us to make a list of our strengths and our weaknesses, to create action items and strategies for addressing threats, and compile monthly and annual progress reports to document how vibrant, diverse, and outward-focused we are becoming. According to Wikipedia, the source for all, strategic planning is an organization's process of defining its strategy or direction and making decisions on allocating its resources to pursue this strategy, including its capital or people. Process of defining strategy or direction and making decisions about how to spend its energy to get there. It's a whole lot of words for a pretty simple concept. Define direction, make decisions on how to get there. That's all strategic planning is. It does not need to be a cumbersome, unwieldy, creativity-killing exercise. Strategic planning is how we define our strategy and direction, and then how we make decisions about how we get there. It's like the vacation model, right? We want to do this thing, so we have to figure out how we're going to get there. Now, if there are folks who are recreational list makers, and I know you are out there, certainly you feel empowered to make as many lists and check them off as you like. Planning for the future of this congregation is not that different from planning for the future of your family or for your own life. Define a direction, consider how to get there, and make their decisions based on those two things. That in itself is a spiritual practice. It is a practice of mindfulness and attention. Who do we want to be? What do we want to look like? What purpose do we serve? And how do we best do that? Periodically, we check in to see if our goals have shifted in one direction or another, and we make adjustments and apply ourselves anew. Now, I confess that as a Myers-Briggs ENTJ, my skills lie more in the visioning and big picture end of this process than in the list making and box checking. You may be surprised by that. But that's okay. We can't all see the big cultural patterns and trends and envision the future in creative ways. We can't all be the ones focusing on each detail to make sure the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. It is as important to know our limitations as it is to know our gifts and talents, lest we engage in a lifetime of trying to be what we're not. I know my skills, I know my limitations. Dear God, I need people around me who are good at checking all the details and making lists with boxes to check. That's why we have Matt. And that is one of the great things about being in a diverse community. There are enough people with enough skills to make this work. We complement one another. Because planning is necessary. Doing mission and vision work is necessary. Because if we aim at nothing, we'll hit it every time. This congregation deserves more than that. This congregation deserves and is capable of reaching for infinity and beyond. May our reach ever exceed our grasp, and may we practice reaching every day. Blessed be, and amen.